don't know much. I know like addiction, and then like you overcame it, and now you kind of work helping
Yeah,
people.
had a relapse
Yeah.
after 5 years clean, and then I went back out on alcohol. Then I ended up in the hospital and almost died.
Good.
Yeah, so whatever you need to know.
Okay. Yeah, I guess just take me on a timeline. Like, what was your childhood like? Do you think you were like predisposed to that? Anyway?
I don't know if I was predisposed. I mean, I came from a broken home, of course. I didn't really have much of a relationship with my father growing up. Just a visitation here and there. They kind of lived on both sides of the tracks. My father had, you know, he was well off, upper middle class. My mother and her new husband were kind of, you know, I would say lower middle class maybe, but we didn't have much. My stepfather drank a little bit, but not to the point where, you know, it was crazy. I mean, he would come home pretty pissy once in a while, but, you know, then when I was 8, like, we had a big blowout. I got into some trouble at school, and my mom shipped me off to live with my dad suddenly. I didn't get along with my dad's new wife, so I was kind of the outcast. And I think that kind of, like, you know, that had a lot to do with what I went through, you know what I mean? It had a lot to do with forming my personality as a young man. During high school, you know, I smoked pot and drank at the bus stop like, you know, everybody else did in the world, didn't they? That's normal, right? But then I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17. Basically, really just to get away. I needed to get out of my environment. I wasn't doing well. At that point, I wasn't really living at home with either of my parents. I was kind of flopping back and forth between my sister's house and my mom's house. And I went in the Marine Corps. And when I went in the Marine Corps, you know, that was a whole new world for me. I was not a very big kid. Like, I was about 120 pounds when I went in. Determined. I had a lot of pride. But I went in the Marine Corps and I served a couple of years, and the 3rd year in, I suffered a really bad injury to my shoulder. Meanwhile, during that time, I went to Japan, which was probably a mistake. It's a country where there's really no drinking age. I drank pretty heavily while I was in Japan, to the point where they wouldn't allow me to extend my stay there. But I met my wife there, my fiance. We were married. And suddenly, you know, I came home, and at 19 years old or 20 years old, I was married. I had a new baby, and I was looking at getting discharged from the Marine Corps pretty quickly. So I had a major surgery on my arm, which left me, you know, not really well. I have a lot of nerve damage in my arm and all, and suddenly I was out. No preparation, no planning, no nothing. Here's your papers. You're not a Marine anymore. That really threw me. I kind of lost my identity for a long time. I didn't know if I was a Marine anymore. I didn't know really what I was, and I started using drugs to cope with that. My wife really didn't know. She knew I was drinking and maybe smoking some marijuana, but she didn't know about the other harder drugs. I was a pretty successful drug addict for about 15 years. I worked, we bought a house, like everything on the outside looked normal, but behind the scenes, I was using cocaine more and more frequently, to the point where it was daily. I was drinking, but not real heavily. My main drug was cocaine for about 15 years. Around that 15-year mark, I started dabbling with opiates, and that was really my downfall. I was mixing cocaine and opiates and alcohol, and my life just became very, very unmanageable. My children suffered, my marriage suffered, my work suffered. I used to work out in the field. I lost that position. I was put in the shop full time where they could keep their eyes on me, and my life just got really hectic. My marriage was terrible. My relationship with my parents had gone down to the point where they really didn't speak to me. I had a big fight with my brother. Needless to say, I ended up getting arrested. My parents kind of refused to speak to me for a long, long time. That lasted about 4 years, for the last 4 years of my addiction, really. But it all culminated when I found out that someone very close to me was using, and I blamed myself. And through trying to find him treatment, I kind of learned what I needed to do at the same time. In this whole story and everything that was involved, we ended up sending my loved one to a Christian treatment center, which allowed him to find out about Christ and God and bring that into his life and find that peace. And at the same time, he found it, he was sharing it with me, which was kind of crazy, because I was never really a churchgoer. I was never really a believer. I didn't have any faith, which, you know, was probably one of the big reasons why I used. But I found myself one day on my knees in my living room asking for God and Christ to help me in my struggle. And he did. It's kind of crazy. I stopped drinking. I stopped doing drugs. I detoxed the old-fashioned way in my house, in my bed. I never went to treatment at that time. I had family members around me to help me get through it. My work was very understanding to a point. Of course, I probably omitted the point where I told them I was sick because I was doing drugs. But I came through that and I started to get involved. Me and my wife started to get educated because we were trying to help other people. And I got involved with a couple of nonprofit organizations, one of them called City of Angels, which is huge here in New Jersey. Another one, a friend of mine named Ed Brazell, runs the Silent Epidemic, which those two I'm still involved with to this day. I never really worked a program then. I wasn't part of an AA or NA fellowship. I thought that I had this, like, you know, me and God, we're gonna face the world, we got it, right? 5 years later, I knew I was in trouble. I started showing addict behavior again. I was kind of not being real responsible. I kind of sloughed a lot of responsibilities off, and that kind of like got the ball rolling. And then my brother decided he wanted to get married in Bermuda, and my addicted self convinced my family and everybody else around me that it would be okay for me to book a trip on a cruise and get the drink package just in case we wanted to have some drinks. I stepped foot on that boat and started drinking that morning, and 18 months later, I was still drinking. Heavier than I ever had been through those 18 months. It was noticed at my work. Of course, it was noticed in my home life. And it wound me up in the hospital. I suffered a heat stroke. I had double lung pneumonia and liver and kidney failure all at the same time. And I almost died. At that point, that was the last time that I used alcohol. I've been sober for about 27 months now. You know, and this is the best life I can live. But all the good points in there is that I went through something where I learned what it was like to be desperate. I learned what it was like not to have hope, all right? But in the 5 years that I had sober before I relapsed, I worked with a lot of amazing people that really cared about me. And when I did relapse, they welcomed me back into the fold without no judgment, just love. And right after I got clean again, I went to school and I became a recovery coach. Then I put in 500 volunteer hours, and then I put in another 25 clinically supervised hours, and I applied to the state for my certified peer recovery specialist certification. And then a year ago, I walked away from my welding career, which everybody thought I was absolutely insane. I made really good money, and in my sobriety, I became a foreman and a lead installer, and I ran a crew. And I walked away from that to work in recovery, which was not the most smart financial move to make. But I felt like I needed a purpose in life. I felt unfulfilled, and I felt that I had a lot to offer other people. And in saying that, it's really got nothing to do with me. I really had to learn to take myself out of the equation and put people and my faith before me. And so far that's worked out. I got a great job at a recovery house. I'm a tech there. I work at a recovery center. I plan all the exit plans for the kids, get them, whether it be sober living or continued care. So I'm really just blessed to be where I am. And in my recovery, this is the best life I've ever lived. Happy, chubby, living good, you know. So, I mean, that's kind of my story. I mean, there's a lot of other details, and there's a lot of war stories and horror stories in there that I really don't like to share. I'm not really proud of them, and nobody cares how much drugs I did, where I bought my drugs, where I went. That's not important, you know. But when I was laying in that bed, dying, I made some promises to the man upstairs. And I promised him that if he saw me through everything, that I would spend the rest of my life helping people. And I plan on keeping that promise. So, I mean, there's a lot of help available out there, but you really have to be careful because there's a lot of really good recovery out there, but there's some people that aren't really out for your best interest either. I would say find your local fellowship meetings. Go to a meeting, put your hand up, and ask for help. I would say contact City of Angels, contact the Silent Epidemic. You can Google all these, they pop right up. King's Crusade is in Marlton. That's right around your neighborhood, you know. Sue Harrison is an amazing person. She runs a great organization. You know, I just really involved myself with really good stand-up people that were in the grassroots of nonprofit foundations, and I associated myself with good people, and you know, and I guess, you know, you're judged by who you associate yourself with. You know, I steered clear of all the other stuff. I mean, sending people to certain places, you know, there's a lot of that going on, and I just won't be a part of it. I can't. So, you know, ask for help. That's the biggest thing. Put your pride aside, surrender, you know, and when the hurt on the outside is greater than the hurt on the inside, you're ready for help.
What do you think, like, what about people that maybe know somebody that's struggling and want to give them help, but like,
I mean, just be there, be supportive. I mean, you can love somebody from a distance. You don't have to co-sign, am I allowed to cuss? You don't have to co-sign their bullshit. Because addicts are masters at manipulation. They will use every means possible to get what they want. Whether that means telling you a story about, you know, their rent's late, oh, they need a car payment, oh, they lost money, somebody stole money. I find that addicts that are at the end of a run or at their breaking point, they always experience a period of really bad luck, all right? And nothing's their fault. Yet the bad luck is only through their own choices. So I would say be there when they're ready. Ask them, hey, are you okay? You know, do you need to talk about anything? Sometimes you have to be that voice of reason or a strong figure in their life. And that's just the best way to go around it. Be honest, but be loving in that honesty. You know, you can't just ask somebody, oh, well, just stop doing that. Because it's impossible. The addicted brain cannot just stop doing something. You know?
It's crazy, like when you're telling me this story, like I've talked to other addicts or people that know addicts, like it's the same thing. Like
absolutely.
They all told me, like, just be like a shoulder for them to cry on.
Absolutely.
Like, protect yourself and make sure they're not like stealing from you or manipulating you, but
yeah,
just kind of like be there for them and let them know that you're there and don't like.
I tell people set a boundary, but never set a boundary that you're uncomfortable keeping. You know, so if you set a boundary and say, okay, well, you can sleep on my couch, but you can only stay there for 2 days. And then, you know, your heart starts to tell you, oh, you got to let them stay. Chances are something bad's going to happen after that 2 days. You're either going to end up missing some things out of your house or, you know, a possible overdose, you know, in your house, which God forbid would happen. I mean, I carry Narcan in my pocket 24 hours a day.
Is that for people that
yeah, for people for overdose, because you never know where you're going to run into somebody. Parking lots are a big place that we find people overdosed. Because they pull off the road, you know, to get high or to get a fix, and we find them slumped over in their cars.
You have it on you?
It's right in my pocket. I carry it every day. Narcan, nasal spray.
Oh, it's
Yep. It's an atomized Narcan. This is the newer 4 milligram dose. The old stuff was only 2 milligrams. But what they're finding is that the fentanyl is Narcan resistant, so it takes more Narcan to bring somebody back.
So they're like, that's what they're lacing with, right?
Yes.
Like will lace like heroin with that?
Yeah, very much of the heroin these days is laced with fentanyl. Fentanyl's cheaper, and it's stronger. So, you know, they're actually creating more volume of a product by lacing it that way at a cheaper cost. A lot of places in New Jersey are now finding cocaine laced with fentanyl. And we've also had reports of marijuana being laced with fentanyl. Yeah, so, you know, being tied into the community that I'm tied into, I get to deal a lot with law enforcement. We go to conferences where they tell us what's going on. We speak to HIDA, which is the High Incident Department of, I guess that would be the DEA. And we find out where the hot spots in New Jersey are. Unfortunately, the town I live in is just like any other town in New Jersey, I guess. I can't even say that there's more here or less here. But, you know, it's everywhere.
Yeah. It's like a secret world almost. Like nobody really
Oh,
sees it
yeah.
on the surface. But
Yeah.
like, you know, like
There's
text messages like, oh,
yeah.
we have like
Yeah.
this amount of drugs for
Absolutely.
this price. Like it's just
Absolutely.
like this whole secret.
Yeah,
like,
there's definitely a
underlying thing.
subculture. I mean, and unfortunately, we're losing a generation to that subculture. I mean, 90% of the people I deal with are young people. However, the fastest growing demographic for overdoses on opiates right now is our elderly, our seniors. Yeah, because they are prescribed a lot of painkillers, and they sometimes forget, or they take too much at first and then they don't remember taking it, or they feel like it's not working and they take more.
And then do they get addicted, or it's like accidental?
No, they actually end up with a pretty good addiction, especially if they suffer from something that gives them chronic pain, and the doctors will just write something for their pain to keep them comfortable. And in the long term, opiates are addictive.
Yeah. So
You
do they
know?
like? Do you think they go to like heroin, or do they stay on those?
No, I haven't seen a whole lot of older people going to heroin, because it's real easy for them to call their doctor and just say, hey, you know, doc, you know, these aren't working anymore. I think I need something stronger. And the medical community is trying to catch up and trying to race up the learning curve when it comes to opiates. And they're very aware of what's going on. But some medical doctors aren't real familiar with addiction. Because if you don't specialize in that, you know, you might get 2 weeks on addiction in medical school. You know, and if you don't continue that education, you know, I mean, I don't know how long it is. I don't want to say it's 2 weeks, but they don't get like a whole lot on addiction, you know. And unless they come out and work in the field of addiction, they just, you know, they're lacking of the education.
Yeah, and it's like it's so hard for just like somebody like us who's never like touched a drug scene enough to like grasp that in our heads. Like you can't just stop.
Like that's awesome that you guys are both like that, man. Like I can't imagine my life being like that. It never was. I mean, I started smoking cigarettes at eight years old. I recently actually just started smoking again. Terrible, right? I got a lot going on. Better than picking up. Yeah, absolutely. Is it better? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I got health problems, so, you know, is it better? Probably not. Will I quit again? Yes. Will I quit again? Yes. You know, but it's a struggle some days. You know, my generation, you know, I mean, I was born in 1969, so, like, I'm old, right? But, like, my generation during the 80s, like, it was normal. Like, we smoked pot and we drank, you know, and as I got older, it was, you know, it was methamphetamine, and then, you know, and then cocaine, and then, you know, and it just got really crazy in my life, you know. So, you know, I've been married to my wife for 31 years almost, and the woman's a rock. She stayed with me through everything. She was a huge part of my recovery. Like, she stood by me and she supported me, and, you know, I really don't know what I would do without her, like, honestly. I mean, it was rough. You know, I mean, we cohabitated in our house for a couple of years, trying to make our relationship better than what it was and get back to where it was. My sons, you know, our relationship was really bad. I blame myself for a lot of the stuff they went through, which I should, because I caused a lot of it probably. My youngest son had his struggles. He ended up joining the Army, and he moved away. He lives in Colorado now and going to school, and I'm very proud of him. My middle son is still in the Air Force. He's a staff sergeant, but he basically left here. And, you know, and he probably will never verbalize that, but I know he left here because of my troubles, you know. And my oldest son is my adopted son, and he's a successful trainer. He works in the fitness field, and he lives in Virginia also, so none of them live here. The craziness is that, you know, we try to open sober living facilities, and we're trying to open places to help all these kids, and the first pushback and resistance we get from a town is, oh, not in my backyard. And I hate to tell these people, but you're right, it's not in your backyard. It's in your house.
Like, would you rather?
It's in your neighbor's house. It's in your brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, nieces, nephews. It's in your house. 1 in 3 households are touched by opiate abuse in America. 1 in 3. You know? So go down the street that's got 20 houses on it. All right? You know, what are you going to get, 4, 5 of them there? All right? 1 in 3, 1 in 4? Eh, same difference. Okay? Somebody's on a prescription med. All right? We write, I think, 70% of the world's opiate prescriptions here in the United States. 70%.
And they don't want it, like the
It's
companies
insane.
don't want to stop, right?
No,
Like, they want to keep
no.
it,
The people that make OxyContin, They just got a patent and rights through the FDA to produce a drug that helps addiction. How does that make any sense? Because now they created a problem and they made billions of dollars, and now they're going to make billions of dollars on the back end saving people.
That's crazy.
But that's the way it works. That's big pharma. You know?
It just sucks. It makes me mad that like money comes before
Absolutely.
everything.
Absolutely. It's all about the great dollar bill. That's really why I work where I work. I mean, bottom line, recovery is a business. I'm not going to say that it's not. It is. Just like everything else in America is a business. But I work for a really great group of people that care. I work on the residential side, so I spend a lot of quality private time and unclinical time, I guess you could say, with my clients. I get to know them personally. I get to know where they've been and what they've been through, and I get to help them out with that, you know. I mean, I chair a couple of meetings here locally in town. I started an open recovery meeting, which means that any avenue of recovery that you want to come down, whether it be faith-based, fellowship, AA, NA, we'll welcome you into the meeting. And it's not only for the addict, their families can come, their significant other can come, their kids can come. And we make a lot of really good progress there, because it's a safe place for families to talk about things that they wouldn't normally be able to talk about at home. I don't want to say I'm desensitized to it, because the ones that I'm close with really hurt. But after you've been in this field for a long time, you know, we lost another one.
Yeah.
And it just drives me to do even more, you know. And I guess maybe that's it's not my new addiction, but it's my passion, you know. I can't imagine going back to a normal job or to a normal way of life where my phone's not available to people 24 hours a day. Or I'm not saying, you know, hey, you need help? Here, I'm here. What can I do for you? You know, it's just, I'm really just blessed to be sober and to be here, because, I mean, I might not have been, you know. It's kind of crazy. Like, I actually drove myself when I had the heat stroke. I drove myself to the VA clinic, and I collapsed in the VA clinic, and they put me in an ambulance and sent me to the hospital. Yeah. I'm just stubborn that way, like, you know. Yeah. It's just what it is. You know, if you're thinking about picking up an opiate, don't, man. Like, listen, I know it's hard. Kids live a really stressful life these days. It's different from when I was a kid. I'm very much aware of that. The social pressures, social media pressure. The outside has to be perfect, even if the inside's screaming for help. Reach out. There's a lot of places out there that you can get help these days. Don't be afraid to ask for help. That's one of the reasons that people don't ask for help. They're afraid they're going to be judged. Right? They don't want to be judged as imperfect or broken. I'm as broken as they come. Right? Like, I'm a broken person. I've been a broken person most of my life. And it wasn't until I really just set my pride aside and surrendered and said, hey, I need help, you know, that I got it. And from many different places. You'd be surprised where the help can come from, you know. Like, I've been standing in line at McDonald's and heard people talking about addiction and turn around and hand people my card. I mean, I've been in restaurants and, you know, hear a son and a mother arguing in the chair behind me, and I just give them my card and I leave, you know. Go to your school counselors. Most schools have a SAC counselor there now. Go see your SAC, man. Like, they're a big help. You know, I work with the local SAC here at Williamstown. You know, she's the greatest. You know, go to your doctor. If you go, tell your mom you got a cold, you need to go to the doctor. Go to the doctor, talk to your doctor. It's private. Yeah. If you tell them you don't want your mom to know about it, they can't tell your mom. Reach out to me, you know. My phone number is on my Facebook page. If you need help, reach out. I'll help you if I can. You know, I'm here 24 hours a day. The phone number that's on my Facebook page is the phone I carry. It's not, you're not going to get an answering machine somewhere. We're going to be getting bigger and better. I have 2 more recovery coaches that work with me under my company now. I have a female recovery coach. I can help, you know, I can put girls in touch with girl recovery coaches. I can put guys in touch with guys. You know, we very seldomly cross paths like that. It's just not ethical, you know. I do work with one young lady now. I'm not her recovery coach. I'm just a mentor. But we got very close, you know, and she calls me every day. She calls me Dad. She calls me every night when she gets done work. Hi, Dad. I'm okay. I'm back at the house. You know, I highly recommend sober living and treatment. You know, it works. You know, so just reach out. That's the biggest thing. Reach out. Stop suffering.